That's what magnetism is. Magnetism is authenticity, and that is how you start cultivating energetically this life around you. Welcome to the Authentic Way podcast. My name is Jess, and I'm really excited that you're here. Thank you so much for trusting me and taking a listen today. This means the world to me. The space was created for something that I feel deeply passionate about, helping people come back into alignment or come home to themselves, getting rid of any old stories or narratives, identities that are no longer fitting with who they are. This work has been my everything. It's something I'm very passionate about. It's something that I've been living, studying, unraveling, practicing it day in, day out. And it feels really meaningful to share that with all of you. This podcast is especially for those moments when everything on the outside looks right to everyone else. It looks like you're doing what you should be doing. Maybe it's the new job that you got or the new relationship, but something's still feeling off. There's this gut feeling you have, this intuitive sense that you're not fully where you're supposed to be, like something's missing. It's like on the outside, you're checking all of these boxes, but there's this lack of connection or fulfillment that isn't present. And more often than not, what's missing is the relationship we have with ourselves. How we show up in the world and how honest we're being with ourselves, how aligned we are with who we actually are beneath like these roles and expectations and conditioning. The Authentic Way is created to help support you through that journey or transition that you're in, no matter what phase you're in life. It's here for anyone who feels ready to come home to themselves and really be honest with who they are and step into their power. This process allows you to kind of step into more alignment, to fully live from a place that feels true and grounded and whole, which is really cool. And I've been working really hard on it. This process was developed through my lived experience, and I'm still going through it again and again. And I think I've realized that the Authentic Way process isn't something that you just complete. It's this lifelong journey of finding who you really are and kind of coming back to yourself over and over again. And due to life and being human and emotions, we're always going to stray from the path. There's always going to be something that kind of knocks us off, and we have to come back. And that's just the human experience. And when you learn to really harness those situations and correct yourself, you're building this muscle over time that allows you to naturally just do that when life gets hard, when things get confusing, when it's time to make a change. If this resonates with you, you're exactly where you're meant to be, and that's really exciting. This process is here to walk you through those messy, in between transitional seasons where things feel really, really unclear, and we've all been there. I'm just coming out of it again. So let's dive right into it. This is a very cyclical journey. Even though there are 4 different phases that I'm going to talk about, they are not in order. They are not linear. It is entirely a cyclical journey that we are constantly on, and it will always keep circling no matter where we are in life and what we're doing. And that's the coolest part about it, is it's constant. And some phases are more exciting than others, depending on where you're at and what you're going through in your life. So phase number 1 is awareness. This really helps you see how change really starts through a purge. When I had come up with the word purge when documenting this journey, It felt so harsh to talk about, but that is the reality of it. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This step is really challenging. Once you open up this step and start doing the work here, it's kind of impossible to leave because through awareness and unblocking, you start to shed old layers of you that are no longer serving you or conditioning that was never really yours. And you end up in this really weird place about identity and not really knowing who you are anymore. When you start noticing what's actually shaping your choices and figuring out where patterns and people pleasing and emotional blocks, maybe old stories about, let's say, being safe or accepted, start showing up, it becomes this entire process of finding the threat between all of these things showing up in your life. This could be through journaling, that you're talking about things that aren't feeling good or there's resistance coming up in your life. And this could be maybe the job's not working or the relationship, or you're feeling really unhappy with where you're living or the hours that you're working, anything. And when you start to really shape together all of the things that are feeling really challenging or difficult in your life, there's usually some sort of old narrative or emotional block holding you back from these things that you're wanting in your life. And an example for this could be that maybe you were a kid and you used to like to sing a lot and you were really loud and theatrical and kooky, and your parents were stressed after a full day of work and they would come home and they couldn't stand any more noise. So they told you to be quiet and you were too loud and you're being too much and to tone it down. So naturally, as children, because things are very black and white, very logical, that is received as you're being too much and you're taking up too much space, being too loud. So as you grow older, you have this conditioning that you are too much, you are too loud. So therefore, you become really quiet, small, and you never speak up. You never put your hand up in the meeting. You never take leadership roles. You never volunteer to do something. You never ask for anything because you're feeling needy. And you find that because you're not asking for something at work because you feel that it's too much, that you are unhappy. And because you have this narrative of yourself, it's woven into your entire life, kind of everywhere you look, which then can result in a bit of an identity crisis, if I'm being honest. And I've been there. It's terrifying. It's scary because then you realize that an entire piece of your identity was never yours. And the only reason why you assumed it is because you were taught that that was safe. Now, this process isn't about blaming or fixing immediately these blocks or emotional patterns or people pleasing tendencies that we have. It's about sitting with it and almost grieving it as it comes up and we let it go. So, typically, what happens with patterns or emotional blocks is they are looping and running the show and everything that we do. So, when you create awareness around the loop, it releases it and it allows your brain to use neuroplasticity to change how that sits in your body and how it's perceived and what feels safe. That's an opportunity for change. So you're using more of like curiosity instead of judgment in this area because you are curious about how can I approach this differently? How does this situation maybe affect this emotional pattern that I've had for years? So when you start getting things out of your head and onto paper through journaling and talk about where is feeling heavy, stuck, or resistant, and seeing the common thread between those areas, that's when you realize the background program running all of your choices and making the choices for you. It's the little scared version of you that's scared to speak up. Now, imagine when you start to see that, it begins to loosen the thread, and you can now start to reprogram your body and mind to have a different narrative. And that's when you are able to start stepping out of your comfort zone and speaking up and taking charge and creating this whole new identity shift that might feel really uncomfortable in the beginning. When you start working with something that's now visible and you see the problem clearly, you see the pattern, how it's repeating in your life, how you keep choosing the same relationship over and over and over and over again, and it's never worked out for you and it's always horrible, and you keep choosing the same person, it now becomes workable because you can now see, you've identified this conditioning that you've created, and you can change that. It's an opportunity for growth. Maybe you used to identify with that person who chose those relationships, but now you identify with this person who has a very high bar. Boundaries are put in place. You're not willing to accept anything less than abundance of love. So when you were able to gain clarity, that's when the opportunity for that change can start. Through journaling, meditation, rewiring, through corrective patterning. When you notice that throughout the day that you aren't speaking up about something when you know the answer to it because you were taught that it's not safe, it's then teaching your body to put your hand up and say, no, I'm actually going to take this moment and I'm going to overwrite that conditioning right now because I'm not doing that anymore. And you start making choices for the person that you are trying to embody and who you actually are. This phase does bring up a lot of grief, and it's that weird sort of phase of the old version of you and the new version of you that you don't quite have figured out yet. This can take a lot of time. This can be really sore. It can bring up a lot of emotions that need to move. And how can we do that in a way that feels safe? It feels like not too much. It feels grounded in who we are and slow. I think doing it in a way that feels tangible and digestible is the answer. I think not overwhelming yourself with this process is really important. When I went through this phase, it felt like it almost ate me alive, if I'm being honest. There was definitely a good week in that period that I felt like my entire life was a lie. And not to be dramatic or scare you, because it's not supposed to scare you at all. It's just me being honest. It's life-changing. And when I discovered all the stories and narratives that I have about myself around not feeling worthy or feeling incapable or inadequate about certain things, I realized it was all the conditioning that I had received through my parents, my teachers, my friends, my family, and not me. And when I started to realize all those old stories creeping up and how they were limiting me and putting me in this box, I knew that it was time to make some change. I would every day journal about these patterns and letting them go and choosing to look at it not from that angle and look at it from an angle that felt far more friendly. How would I speak to my friend about this? How would I tell them how they show up? It's a very interesting phase to be in because it really exposes you. And you have to be willing to look that point blank in the face and be super honest with yourself. Once you kind of address those areas that have been a lie and haven't been your truth, and you start reconnecting with your truth and that, yes, you are smart, yes, you are worthy, yes, you should take up space in a room. That's when it heads into phase number 2, which is reconnection. This is a really beautiful phase that allows for slowing down and listening to your essence, to your intuition, your guiding light. This takes also some time and can be a little bit of a frustrating process. It can also be painful, but it can also be extremely beautiful at the same time. Once you see what's been standing in your way, the work becomes about rebuilding the relationship with yourself and turning down that external noise or influences is crucial in this period. It's about withdrawing from your friends to whatever degree feels healthy, staying at home, journaling, meditation, walks in nature, going in the water, being creative, whatever it is that works for you to allow you to reconnect to yourself is super vital in this phase. You're basically putting yourself on center stage during this phase and falling in love with yourself, listening to who you are, almost in a phase of like reparenting who you are, and still working through letting go those narratives or those stories. And you're being gentle through the integration of this new embodiment of who you are and who you have always been, but hasn't been told it's safe to be. This is a time of regulating the nervous system, creating the inner safety, feeling all of your emotions instead of bypassing them. That's super important in this phase because it's like anything that you aren't feeling gets suppressed into the body further and further and further, creating more emotional blocks and barriers. And through this phase, we are trying to let those move through us. We're trying to clear our auras. We're trying to clear our emotional patterning and our nervous systems to hear and feel clarity and slowness and regulation. This is a time where once you're able to slow down through these mindfulness practices, you're able to recognize your own signals again. You're able to tap into that intuition a lot easier, to hear your own inner voice because there's no longer anything influencing you. There's no one from the outside, such as your parents and your friends and social media, telling you what to be, how to be, and why you should do this. For the first time, you're making decisions fully and completely for yourself. And you're stepping in and you're listening. Even though it may not make logical sense, you're listening to what you need. And oftentimes, that can be a lot. That can look like realizing, oh my gosh, I need to get a new job. I hate this job. My body is so dysregulated every day at work. I am emotionally distraught when I go into work. And you start listening to your body telling you, because it is screaming, I promise, what it's needing and what is no longer in alignment with you and why it's not working. And as I mentioned within the first phase, a lot of grief can come up, and same within this phase. That in between feeling of not who you were, but and not yet becoming who you actually are is really tricky because it is a process that doesn't happen overnight. You can feel very lost when trying to find that part of yourself because it does take time. And that's where this self trust has to like grow. And it's not a concept. You actually feel it in your body day to day. You start trusting that intuition and hearing what your body is telling yourself. During this phase for me, this looked very creative and slow and isolated. I full on hermited in my home for months. And this is not the first time that I've been through this phase. I've been through this many times. And this is one of my favorite parts of the cycle. This is where I'm journaling every day, I'm meditating every day, I'm moving my body every day. I love to dance. I love to move my body in the most beautiful way, the way that feels most connected to myself. And even though it may not look good, it's about just feeling and letting like the meditation through movement guide you, which is really, really beautiful. I did a lot of crafts. I would knit, I would make jewelry, I would play with watercolors, I would play with music, I would read. I did everything that felt like this like inner grandma of mine. And it's so fun to tell your friends that you aren't going out to something because you need to knit. And they may laugh at you, but not only are you knitting, you are connecting with yourself and getting into the flow. You're using such an expansive side of your brain. You're no longer using the logical side. You are using the part of your brain that gets you into flow and it sees things differently. You start using your neural pathways differently. And it's a really beautiful experience to kind of get you out of that day-to-day hustle mindset dysregulation. The nervous system remains calm when it's in flow and it's able to have an expressive creative outlet. It's such a beautiful time to be able to reconnect with yourself and fall in love with spending time with yourself is so important. And it's okay if it doesn't come right away. It takes time on its own. And that's okay. It will come. I promise. You just need to trust yourself. And please note, I am not telling you to cut yourself off from the world. I am simply telling you what has worked for me and why. I only want you to do what feels good for yourself and your mental state to whatever degree that looks like. Once you're in this phase, all of a sudden you will start feeling like you're doing all of this internal work beneath the surface, foundational, the quiet work. This is where like the real movements start happening that no one can see. But you will notice this big shift in energy that all of a sudden you wake up one day and you realize that you are able to start bridging your inner work with the real life. This is the phase 3 of momentum. Alignment starts showing up in your actual choices that you're making. Once you've reconnected with self and found out what is true to you, what's in alignment, what's authentic to you, who are you actually? This is when you can start putting that into actions. When people ask you to go to the club, let's say, and you realize that drinking alcohol and going to a club and running away from all your problems is no longer in alignment with you, you get to start saying no. You get to start standing in your authentic power when you decide what's for you and what's not. It's where you get to learn how to spend your time and energy in relationships, work, boundaries, rest, creation. It can feel really exciting and confusing at the same time because you really do have to play with it here. You have to learn. It's going to be a bit of trial and error, let's say. You're going to learn that sometimes right off the bat, you're not going to say no to a situation. You're going to go to the club because you feel like that's what you used to do. You should just go. You should go spend the night out. And when you're there, I promise you, you will realize, oh my God, why am I even here? This has happened to me so many times, and it's taken me quite a few times to learn different things that I no longer enjoy doing that actually aren't in alignment with me. You're not really on autopilot anymore, and you're now actually being conscious of the decisions that you're making and the trust that you're building in yourself, and knowing that you've got yourself and knowing that, yes, you know your own boundaries through the trial and error part of the process. It's trying things and noticing how do they feel in your body and letting the sensation like guide your decisions and not logic about what should I do, or I used to do this, or why wouldn't I do that? People would always go to do something like this together, right? It's like you're learning to actually feel the response or the answer in your body. It's become so obvious because we've started in the reconnection phase, learning what our signals are again and trusting those. This phase of momentum also really has to do with releasing roles that no longer fit. And this could be through friendship, through work. This identity that you have, you're actually actively releasing and making the choice to do something else. This could even show up in how you dress, how you're shopping. What are you shopping for? Maybe you look like this copy and paste of everyone else on the internet, all of the influencers, everyone who's doing Pilates and green juice, and you've decided you're only doing that because you've been taught that that's what wellness is, or taking care of your body or health. And you've actually realized that it's not that. And you're choosing a completely different life now. And making those decisions can be really hard and confusing at the same time. Your decisions may not make sense to everyone else or be logical. And that can be really hard to not explain to someone. It can feel very confusing and hard, and it feels like you need to explain yourself. When you start making decisions from this place of alignment and taking actionable steps towards something that you're wanting, that's when the real momentum starts to create, and you'll start see it showing up in different ways. When you're actively choosing these actionable steps that are putting one foot in front of the other to become who you truly are and to truly embody that, it becomes way easier to do and way more grounded to do when something all of a sudden doesn't really feel right and you feel so much more certain in yourself. You're kind of letting the transitions unfold without forcing any certainty around it, but knowing that you've got yourself and you know what's right and wrong and knowing what feels good and what doesn't. It starts to feel less like you're pushing uphill and more like an unfolding. There's this resistance to life that you will feel, or this heaviness that shows up when we are out of alignment. And that's that feeling that something's not right, or things are harder than they should be, or you are needing to do more. And that isn't the energy that we're looking for at all here. A small decision that maybe doesn't seem like much in the moment can really change a lot. It can be far more powerful than you were ever expecting it to be. And choosing that with certainty will create this energetic alignment with the outcome that you are desiring. During this phase, for me, when I started creating momentum, I really had to make a choice about a friend group that was no longer serving me. And I think through this process, I had really discovered that anytime I had hung out with this particular friend group, I had to make myself really small and I had to hide parts of myself. Or if I tried to open up parts of myself and talk about it, it was laughed at or made fun of in a certain way, in a small, powerful way. And it started to feel like I was no longer accepted for me, and I had to put on this fake persona. So part of my momentum phase was really letting go of this friend group and really sitting with no friends, really just sitting in it. And that was a really hard decision, but I knew that that was the most aligned thing that I could have done for myself in that time frame. And I needed to really, as we're heading into stage 4, trust that that was going to work. And it did. It showed up. I have the most amazing aligned community. I've never been more myself than I am now, which is crazy because I never thought that that would be my case. I get to fully be me, and they ask for more. They encourage it. They want to see me. They want to talk about it. I feel so beautifully supported than I ever have in my life by my community, just because of the small decision of realizing I don't think these friends are for me. I was able to let them go. And through stage 4, the trust process, I was a magnet to the aligned friends that I was calling in, the people who were authentic to me and allowed me to be my most authentic self. It was introducing this like surrender phase in the trust that I really needed to stay grounded in and remember that it was going to pay off. After the aligned action, which is like choosing to let the friend group go, there's this invitation to kind of soften control. You're not forcing, it's not passive, like you're kind of just sitting in limbo. And that requires a lot of trust and patience. And that's extremely important in this phase. When you're able to sit in that and know that as long as you are staying in alignment, you're not settling or giving in to people because you don't have any friends, because you've just given them all up, you actually get to kind of sit back now and watch what responds when you move into alignment. The synchronicities are the right conversations, unexpected openings or opportunities just like showing up to your door because you made an aligned decision. You made a decision that was magnetic. It's this feeling during the trust phase of like feeling gently guided instead of constantly pushing. And you're meeting life halfway through energetically signaling to the universe or higher power that you are making decisions because you are getting rid of things in order to make room for this new. So when I got rid of those friends, it signaled that I was ready and creating room for the people who were far more in alignment for me. This phase can be slow, it can be grueling, it can be unexpectedly fast, it can be anything, but it's really trusting that divine timing of everything and continuously kind of going back and forth from momentum to this step of trust. Momentum, trust, momentum, trust, momentum, trust, and knowing that the more action that you're able to take without forcing any outcomes, but continually signaling the universe, yes, I'm waiting for this. Yes, this is coming. Yes, I've made space for this, while also trusting that it's going to come at the right time and surrender into those situations, the synchronicities start arriving. They start showing up. They start letting momentum carry you. They start feeding you what you want because you're now this like crazy magnetic person who's in full alignment. And I always say the most popular person at the dinner party is not the person with the crazy career, the fancy car, or the crazy education. It's the person who is most grounded, honest, raw, and authentic to themselves and those around them. They aren't changing themselves just to be someone else or show up a certain way. They aren't looking for external validation. They just are so grounded in their own energy, and people love that. That's what magnetism is. Magnetism is authenticity. And that is how you start cultivating energetically this life around you and calling it in through the aligned action and momentum stage, through the trust. Then comes the outcome of exactly what you were looking for. is kind of like dancing with the universe in a way and knowing, okay, I'm going to energetically do this so that there's room for that. And you just keep dancing back and forth, back and forth. It's a very beautiful process. And when you're able to trust and lean into it, it feels really beautiful when you start realizing that your trust muscle is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it becomes a lot easier to trust higher power or consciousness, the universe, whatever you want to call it. And knowing when things happen, trust it was supposed to happen. Trust that's part of the plan. Trust that that's part of the divine timing. While this whole process is very cyclical and beautiful and flowy and moving constantly, you don't really graduate from these phases forever. They will keep coming back just depending on life transition and based on what we're going through or what's currently happening. There's different seasons in your life that call for different kinds of work. And that's where these phases and this process really kind of fall back into place, and we can rely on them and be able to kind of see where we're at and where we're probably going after that. Sometimes it's through the awareness piece again, or sometimes it's back to reconnection into the brave, aligned action. Sometimes it's simply a state of receiving, and you can return to any phase at any time. And it's not about becoming someone new at all. This journey is not about just completely changing who you are as a person. This journey is about coming home to yourself and coming home to the person who you were as a kid before they were told what was right and wrong, what they should and shouldn't do, and what's any societal expectations that we have on around us. It's this remembering of who you are. And sometimes that can show up in thinking about when we were younger and playing. How did we like to play? What did that look like? What were we doing? Maybe it was you loved to paint. Maybe you loved to be creative. Maybe you loved to sing, but your parents maybe told you that the arts weren't going to get you anywhere. Maybe they told you there was no money in it, so you just gave up on it. But in reality, you're extremely creative, and you need to tap into that because you are an artist. That's what you're here to do. It's a coming home to yourself. It's giving yourself this like permission to live from that place without any conditioning, that little you who's always been there, that guiding light. And I want to give you permission to do it at your own pace and create this like own path that is unique to you. And even though it feels scary choosing a new path, it's okay. And that's where this authentic alignment shows up of, okay, how are we going to do this? How are we going to create this own path? Maybe we don't know what it looks like, and maybe it's scary, and maybe the path is really foggy right now. But our North Star, our guiding light, is the authenticity and groundedness within ourselves that we know that we're following. It's putting that one foot in front of the other and just walking and knowing that you are grounded each step of the way, and each decision you're making is grounded in your authenticity. The alignment is starting to create, and you become happier with each day because things are feeling far more relaxed, happy, hopeful. You start to wake up not in this fog and start to wake up feeling excited about the day. And what are you going to do that day? And what are you going to read? And how are you going to be creative? How are you going to show up at work? How are you going to start creating your own passion project on the side and start actually listening to that inner flame that's always been there and start adding fuel to the fire? Because that flame is the reason you're here. It's the reason we're on earth as humans. Alignment is not something that you find. It's always within you. It's something that you remember. It's coming home to yourself. That's why I've been calling it this. It's this beautiful journey of enlightenment and awareness around yourself. This process is here to support you on this journey. And my favorite part about this entire process is loving the steps every single part of the way. Even though they aren't easy, it's about knowing, oh my gosh, this sucks right now. And this is also really beautiful because think of the progress that I just made. If you're feeling this like disconnected feeling, you are not broken. You're just feeling out of alignment with who you truly are. And coming home to yourself is a process. It's an ongoing endeavor, not a destination. You're allowed to take your time on this journey. You're allowed to change who you are. You're allowed to let go of this identity that you've been in. You're allowed to choose what feels true, even if it looks different or confusing to other people. And you don't have to have the whole path figured out just to take the next honest step in front of you. I've even done part of my journey in the quiet because I didn't really feel I could handle other people understanding the work that I was doing. And I needed to live authentically in my own power quietly before I could kind of come out of my shell and be here. And I'm curious, maybe this is just a slight invitation. What would one small aligned step look like for you right now if you were to take one today about coming home to yourself or making or changing a decision that you would normally make because it feels good, because it feels more in alignment with you than the decision that you normally make? I'm really excited to dive into all of these phases with you deeper, and I'll be doing a podcast on each and every one and what it's going to look like and how I can hold your hand and guide you through the process, maybe through journal prompts, meditations, anything that might sort of support it or prompt it on that part of the journey. It feels so exciting to share with you and to be able to use my voice to get this work out there and to talk about it and normalize this so much more, because as I'm in my 30s, I'm realizing everyone is constantly going through transition and trying to find that grounding or footing and make decisions with all these loud voices around us of telling us what would make sense and what would be logical. And it's so hard to make decisions when you're not making it from a place of full embodiment and full authenticity. The feeling in your body, the somatic awareness of what is yes and what is no. So to be able to speak on this subject and talk about this journey of mine has been so exciting, and I'm so excited to release so much more on this and dive deeper into all of these subjects, because there's so much to talk about here, and talk a little bit about my journey and what that's looked like and how I ended up here. That feels a little scary, but I would be willing to share that with you because it's been a lot, but it's been also my life's work recently, and everything I'm doing is based around this work. So thank you so much for listening to me today. This means the world to me. I'm feeling so much support and gratitude to be able to do this, and I can't wait to show up more. We'll see you next time. Thank you.